Welcome to Therapy, Tech, and Takeout, where humor meets healing with bite-sized chunks of wisdom and techie tips. I am Tony Teixeira. I am a therapist, entrepreneur, recovering overthinker, and a bit of an ethics nerd. And I'm joined by...
Hi, Tony. I'm Jackie Toll. I am an entrepreneur, an unapologetic spreadsheet addict, and a low-rent stand-up comedian. Although, I was just thinking about it. I have not been doing stand-up lately. I don't know why. It's like out of my rotation of things to do, I think. But I'm still going to claim it. So how's your week been, Tony? What you vibing on this week?
What's a stand-up comic? Always a stand-up comic.
Exactly.
Yeah. I remember when I started running and I had a coach and, right after I ran my first race, and he kept calling me an athlete. And I'm like, I'm not an athlete. Like, I've never been an athlete. And he's like, you ran a race, you trained for it, you ran a race. Once an athlete, always an athlete. So
I love that.
It took me probably about a decade to claim that and say, that's true.
That's true. That's me.
So that's you. That is who you are.
I love it. I love it. I think that's a good rule. So how's your week been?
Week has been really weird. Really weird. I just completed a really big project. I wrote a book.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's so exciting.
I am very excited. And it went through, my editor had it, and then the developmental editor had it. And now it's back in the hands of the editor. And I say it's a weird week because I basically said to them, well, what do I do now? Oh my gosh, I maybe we should have included this in the book, or can I add something? And they're like, this is very normal that after you're done, you feel like, there's your head is still in it. And they basically, what's weird for me is I'm really trying not to think about it, because one of the things they want is come back with fresh eyes. We have it's going to be somewhere else for 2 weeks. I forget it's going through another process or whatever,
Right.
or it's sitting somewhere. I don't know. But later in this week, they're going to kind of come back with some other kind of things that we're going to look at together. And they're like, we want you to come back with fresh eyes.
Right. Yeah.
So I have this mandate to do nothing else. They're like, read a book, plant a garden.
Anything but think about your book.
Anything but think about the book. So it's trying really hard not to see the white elephant in the room that's sitting in the room. But that's where I'm at, just kind of reflecting and just trying to take in that it's done. It's really done. I don't have to do anything else right now.
Yeah. Oh, that's a tough one. I love that.
How about you? Where are you in your life?
Fun week. This weekend, a friend and I took a resin class. Have you ever taken one of those?
Nope. What is that? Ooh, that is beautiful. Yes, that is really pretty.
I made this set of 4 coasters, and she made a charcuterie board. And so it was real fun. You just go and pour resin on things. It's really not hard.
Is where do you go for that? Are there special resin classes?
Yeah, it seems
studios?
that kind of like the painting with a twist, or those types of things. But I think that resin and glass art is kind of in its heyday right now as far as those types of studios opening up. And so I found one that was she lives probably about an hour or so south of me, and so I found a place that was kind of in between for both of us and convenient for neither of us. So it was a lot of fun. And they also had things where you could they had pieces of glass that you could then arrange, and then they pour resin on it, and it's art after that. It was really cool. They had some green curvy ones that were part of palm trees and stuff. They were cute.
That's great. I'm in my art era, so I'm really excited to hear about this. Maybe
it's a fun one.
Yeah. That sounds great.
Well, awesome. I'm excited to talk about our topic today. I know we mentioned it last week just in passing, but I'm excited to dive deep into these lawsuits against social media.
There's a lot going on with social media. Yeah,
there is. Yeah, and what so we have a couple of pieces of media that we'll link to in our show notes, but you know, basically there's a large group, right? It's called
Right.
JCCP 5255, but it's
Right.
thousands of plaintiffs. Um but they have like one like main sort of plaintiff that they call KGM, who is suing they sued Meta, they sued ByteDance, Google, and
YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah.
Snapchat, is that part of
Yeah,
ByteDance?
the
Yeah,
Snap.
okay.
Yeah.
Snapchat.
I
Yeah.
think we got them
And
all.
yeah, so and KGM is now a 20-year-old woman,
Right.
and she's saying that the platforms, because of their algorithm, the way they work, addicted her to
Yeah.
social media at a very young age, which your prefrontal cortex, the part of the thinking and planning part of your brain, is not completely formed. So anything is gonna, things are gonna have an impact
Yeah.
when you're young. And she said, yeah, this has had an impact on her and on children. So that's how it's a class action lawsuit. And now I think Snapchat and TikTok both settled.
Yes. Yeah, I
Yes.
think so. And so I think mainly now, yeah, it's Facebook and YouTube and
Yeah, Facebook,
yeah.
Instagram, because they're
Yeah.
both Meta and
Yeah.
YouTube. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, interesting idea, interesting approach to suing social media, because they've been sort of shielded from that from with freedom of speech type laws. People
Right.
can't don't have action against them in a lot of cases, but to
It's
attack
a
it from
land
this
it's a
angle,
land landmark lawsuit. This
yeah,
is, I mean, I can't really stress that enough. This is like really the first big thing. And I think this is going to set up, and you might agree with me, right? Like this is going to set up the face of what this all looks like, I think, for the future. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's interesting too, because because it's a landmark lawsuit, right? Like the defense from these corporations is really, what laws are we breaking? Like, what rules did we break? Like, you can't point to anything. And so it'll be very interesting to see how this comes out, because I think the idea of the ethics, which is why I'm so excited to talk to you about it today as my ethics nerd. The ethics of like a company that designs its technology around retaining attention, and or whatever else it designs it around, right? But that creates that sort of addictive pattern in behavior, that's targeting the children, because typically we try to prevent children, right? We don't let them drink alcohol, we don't let them buy cigarettes, we try to keep
Right.
addictive behaviors and activities away from them, like you were saying, because they're not fully formed yet.
Can't make really those decisions on their own. I mean, there's the debate is always out on when that's fully formed. It used to be 18 years old, then it was 21, and now we say like kind of 24. Maybe that, there's still it
Yeah,
forms, it continues to form, and we're always shaped by our experiences, but really that's still being shaped into young adulthood. So that says a lot. I think for me, what's really important is what the intent is, and that things can accidentally happen and there can be harm, like
hmm,
when you're holding somebody liable, and that might look different than intent.
right,
So it's going to be really interesting to see in this lawsuit, they're going to be able to subpoena records, emails,
yeah,
data that maybe they did research and studies on to see how do you and if there are things that are like how do you can keep somebody's attention for as long as possible, you
right,
know that's very telling. But borrowing from like behavioral research, neurobiological kind of research, that there have been gambling, like slot machines, cigarettes, like these industries have taken what we know about behavior and kind of
Yeah.
neurobiology and used it to their advantage to maximize engagement, to get people addicted, to keep them coming back. And it is their intent in the social media companies to drive that behavior, which keeps people addicted and keeps them coming back. I mean, that's what it's not innocuous to say, oh, somebody who's at a slot machine, we just want them to keep pulling that machine. We
Right.
want them to keep pulling that, the one-armed bandit, keep pulling that handle. That leads to behavior that continues beyond, a brief period of time, right?
Right. Right.
It creates and changes neural pathways in the brain.
Yeah. And that dopamine loop, you get that hit,
Right.
um, and then you're looking for the next one, and it's serving it up to you. I remember, um, years ago, like, listening to how that, they designed slot machines, like, in that way in
Yeah.
that way. And I think the other interesting thing to think about here is, e as we think about all of these sort of biological chemicals, right, is it really that different than like the long-term effect? If you're addicted to social media and the long-term effect on your health, perhaps, that can happen because you're stuck in sort of a loop where you
Hmm.
can't, like, get out of it, or, it's interfering with your ability to interact with, normal daily activities and things like that. I mean, I think that there's a lot of potential harm that hopefully
Hmm.
this lawsuit brings to light. Because again, it's not that it doesn't necessarily mean these technologies are bad, and like you said, it really does come down
Right.
to intent. And for adult users, um a lot of people use social media and have no issues, but I think the idea of talking about what those harms can be, that they can happen to people, so that you're aware of them in your so you can look for them in yourself and others, is important too. And having a
Yeah.
place to have some of those conversations, I think, especially as it relates to these kids, because we can all, I think, as a society, we want to protect kids, right? And, like, we want to look out for
Right.
them,
Right.
and
And
we have like
Aust-
natural instinct to do that.
to protect, right? In Australia, so they have, I think we
Yeah,
mentioned it before and we talked about it, that kids under 16, they basically are banned from
banned.
viewing social media. I mean, and we make distinctions about that. People under 21 can't drink.
Right.
You have to be a certain age to drive. There are a lot of caveats. I think that we have that built in instinctually,
Yeah.
and we've institutionalized that so that we can continue to protect young people. And this is like kind of like a wild experiment.
Right.
It like, here's social media, go have at it. And now we're really just starting to see what the effects of that are. And we still don't really know. What's interesting, I think, about this lawsuit, Jackie, is there's a difference between, it's not about the content. There's a difference between the
Right.
endless scrolling and the content. So I think this particular lawsuit is not talking about content.
At all.
They're
Yeah.
at all. They're real, and that's another
It's
issue.
design. Yeah.
It's the design. Yeah. What can you say about that in terms of algorithms? You're the techie person here. What's
Yeah,
what's
well, I mean,
happening
I think
there?
you go back to the money, right? How do these companies make money? They make money, you know, in a simplistic way, by selling ad revenue, right? Like, I'm sure, like, Google has a million ways it makes money, and, all those things. But, like, a large driver of revenue for social media is advertising dollars. And so when you look at, from a corporate perspective, what's my job as, like, the leader of that corporation? It's to create something that drives the most ad revenue, right? And so that's what their marching orders have been, and that's from um a real blank standpoint, like, how they approach it. But then I think you have to layer in the ethics of it. It's not at all costs, right? Like, it's not, um but, like, I don't that's where I think, just overall, we really break down in the society from that perspective, right? Like, because if the jobs of the businesses is to earn as much money as they can, they're going to do that, and they do that well for the most part, or but like you have to layer in ethics and law and those other things to put boundaries and guidelines to it to say this is the way that we're, go do and have at, but within this framework and parameters. And I mean, when you look at our legislature at a national level, right, like most of these people aren't of an age that understand social media on any level, more like not, especially not the impact it's having on kids, right? Like, so I think that there's a real big gap, and we're just hoping, that these lawsuits will kind of drive policy, perhaps, and things, because we're in a place where there's just a dearth of it. I think there are a few states that have put some laws in place at this point. I forget the number. It wasn't
Mm,
a ton, but it was, I want to say, like 8 or 10 states have some laws related to social media and youth.
mhm. And, with limits around them or with how social media operates? What do you know about that?
I want to say it's different. I think there are a few different variations, but I think some of them are around, yeah, like limits and what they're allowed, like how they're allowed to target kids. I think if you think back to cigarettes, right? Like
Right,
they made rules around that they can't market them to children. I think there's
right.
going to need to be some rules here and some accountability, because there is that place for ethics, I think, in a society where we expect, things to be bound by
Yeah.
uh, some sort of morals. And exploiting kids knowingly is not okay. And I think we know that on some level the social media companies know what they're doing, right? Like I
Yeah, because
they have the
if you
data.
if just kinda slow it down a little bit, is it an accident that you can endlessly scroll?
Right.
That there are decision points that were made, and I'm sure that was a decision point that
Absolutely.
somebody made, and it's probably based on the fact that, yeah, people will keep scrolling
Yeah.
if you give them an opportunity to
I'm
do
sure
that.
that there's
Our brains want an off switch. We will
need it.
hit it when we see it, if it's available. If it's not available, then our brains will keep on going.
That's such an interesting point. I wonder, what do you think, like how do you think the impact of social media addiction will manifest, like, in people later on in life? So, like, if this happened to you as a kid, like, what impacts do you think you might see later on?
Good question. I mean, probably what you would see in most addictions, it can lead to other mental health issues like depression, issues with impulsivity, maybe impulse
Yeah,
control.
that's
Like
interesting.
it might have, it will kind of send its tendrils out into other areas of your life. People who have addictions, they do that to exclusion of other things like leisure activities, relationships. The focus is on the addiction so that the relationship, if it's kind of goes against the grain for the addiction, then it becomes another source of conflict, or there's more conflict in those relationships. So it really affects people personally, professionally, and interpersonally, as well as intrapersonally, because then they're holding on to uh the conflict and the stress, because people who are addicted don't want to be addicted. This is not what they want, but they really feel helpless to change that, because it's not about like cold turkey. So when I was first trained in addiction way back when, the model was really, I think, really just AA, like you abstinence. You just like kind of step away from it. That's like the only thing you could do, and
Yeah.
you really should go to AA. And over the years, it's been, I think, the model of harm reduction has
Mhm.
played a bigger role. And I kind of like harm reduction as a model as well. It takes away a lot of the shame and the blame and works with where people are. And, if it's an all or nothing thing, like abstinence with sex, right? Telling teenagers, don't have sex, right? Yeah, like
Yeah.
that works. If you tell people no, they can't do this thing, then of course it's going to become more attractive to them. But if we look at harm reduction as what's a way that you can lower, that for you that feels comfortable, and maybe you want to continue lowering it, that's an option too. So it gives people more options in terms of addiction. So that might be helpful in the world of social media and making changes. We probably are not, abstinence is not going to work, keeping
Right.
completely away, but a model of harm reduction, of decreasing it. That's why, like, when we first started, we talked about, the apps that help you reduce your, kind of your content, and, how often you're on social media, and different apps. That might be helpful
Yeah.
in this area.
Can I ask you, is the harm reduction model, just out of curiosity, um, is that applicable across like all addictions, or is that um really is it like all
Yeah,
interesting?
probably.
Yeah, cool. I like that because I think that makes a lot of sense. When in the frame of something like AA, where it's like it's not something that's gonna like immediately kill you, like alcohol won't, but like some drugs will. But interesting, I like that. I think that that's a positive shift for sure, giving
Yeah.
people more
Uh,
choice, and like you said,
uh,
de-shaming the process.
yeah. And harm reduction can look like a lot of things in other countries. For example, needle exchange programs,
Yeah,
that's harm reduction.
I like
Um,
that. Yeah,
you know, creating safety zones where there's naltrexone,
yeah,
the spray, is available for, opioid overdose and things like that. Um, so creating, yeah, so like we're kind of moving away from social media, but I think that you can apply some of what we know about addiction and how to treat it to this, but we have to have some guardrails and safety around it, because teenagers can't buy liquor at the liquor store because somebody is there carding them. The
right,
into this world is, there's like no resistance there. It's so
yeah,
easy because everybody has a phone or access to a laptop. Even very young children have iPads these days and
for
learn how to
sure.
kind of get
My
online and
friend's kids
navigate.
like have been ordering stuff on Amazon from her phone from the time that they were little.
Right.
It's
Right.
wild.
So
I would never even think of that, but
so if we're thinking about addiction, then who's really gonna be the safeguard for that? Because we do have people for, especially for kids. We're not even talking about grown-ups, right? We're just talking about the experience that children might be having. Somebody's there to make sure that somebody under 21 is not buying this. What does that look like for
yeah,
social media? And we talked about, like, Australia, like, how do they, for lack of a better word, police, or like monitor, better word. How do they monitor the kids under 16? We talked about this with AI and the
right.
worry about people going to AI, and the suicides that are occurring because AI is not picking up. That's right. So
Or
teenagers,
even like encouraging it. Yeah.
yeah. And teenagers can link their account, but we can figure out a lot of workarounds around
Yeah.
that for teenagers. So there's that aspect. Like, if this case does, show there was intent for harm, what is that going to look like? Is that going to change the way social media creates an algorithm in their platform, or does it look like there's going to be some kind of monitoring system for children under 16 or 18, whatever it is, to make it a little bit difficult to enter the system? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, that's the thing that kind of made me curious about this too, was that because some of the plaintiffs or defendants have settled, um like and their settlements aren't public, was it just monetary, or were there like agreements as far as changes that they were going to make, or anything like that? I think it's kind of odd that for such a landmark case that they would settle with half of the parties so early. Like,
Right.
I don't know, that just didn't 100% make sense to me.
That
Um,
doesn't make sense to me either
unless they got
because
something really good out of it, and I hope it's something that isn't just cash. Um, like, I hope it's change, because that seems to be what the the driving force is, at least from the articles that I've read's perspective, is the hope is that there's change, not just a monetary settlement.
right, not just here's some money and like get out
Yeah,
and we're going to just keep doing the things the way we've been
right,
doing them.
right. Kick the can down the road.
I'm a little bit of a pessimist here. I suspect the money was doled out. And perhaps, well, here's the optimist coming up for me. Perhaps when the case is settled, whatever comes out of it might have to apply to them
Be
later on.
applicable.
You know, they
Yeah,
got out maybe with less money, but at the end of it, there may be some policy change that
yeah.
is going to affect
Impact
TikTok and
them.
Snapchat anyway. Right.
Yeah, I would hope so. So I thought that was interesting. Interesting as well. What other thoughts did you have on this?
Really kind of said them all. I mean, I think that, for me, what was the most interesting piece was the scrolling versus content piece,
Yeah,
which brings up that might be the kind
the
of
change.
next
Yeah,
piece that gets looked at. Like, if we break this down, there's more than just the endless scrolling that is an issue. I mean, it's interesting that, I was thinking, comparing and contrasting to our last uh, episode or a couple episodes ago. I don't remember when we talked about, and I wonder if they'll cite that study in this, is that kids who scrolled were no more depressed or had mental illness or anxiety than kids who were not scrolling,
engaged. Yeah,
not as right. And so that study is a really interesting study, but it's also very, very new. I think the jury is still out on what the effects are. If someone says they're harmed and they feel harmed and they have data,
right.
what did you say? It's like thousands of people in
Yeah,
this class action lawsuit, and they have data and they see the deterioration of their mental health. That's really important information that you can't dismiss, even if there is a study that shows something else. So I think that there's a lot more that needs to be done in terms of research and also to consider in what the other parts of social media are, including, content, not just scrolling. How about you? What are
absolutely.
your last thoughts on this?
My thoughts are, or like the thing that like I felt mostly in this was like feeling bad or having empathy for parents, right? Because there's just so much information out there, like you just said. That it reminds me of the days of like drinking coffee is good, drinking coffee is bad, or red wine or whatever. But like it does feel like there's a lot we're still figuring out. We're building the plane while we're flying it, and I hope that parents don't take uh whatever the outcome of this lawsuit is and then internalize it as like that they did something wrong or that they were bad or that they develop shame around it, because we are all just figuring it out as we go.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that you said that. I mean, I hear that all the time. Parents who like, it was January, not that long ago, right? So, and parents saying things like, "Oh, I'm going to make sure that my kids aren't on their iPad as much," and and they have a lot of shame and guilt around like,
Oh yeah,
digital media at all. So, yeah, yeah. Give yourself some grace. We're all learning. I love how you said, we're building the plane as we're flying it. We absolutely are. Um, and I think just being present with your kids as often as you can is the most important thing. Warmth and consistency.
absolutely, so
Yeah,
important.
yeah, yeah. So thank you. This has been
Yeah, this
like
is
a
an awesome
fun,
topic. I appreciate you bringing it back up for us to dive into a little bit more.
yeah.
Um, Next week we're going to be talking about Moltbots and Moltbook. So I'm excited to dive into that because it's kind of a newly bubbling up thing in the zeitgeist. So uh, like and subscribe. Don't forget to do that, and we will catch you guys all next week. Have a great one.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.